A study in 2006 found that students who spaced out their math practice improved more than those who crammed, even having the same total study time. The same goes for screaming practice. People who cram 5 hours into one day don't get as far as those who practice 1 hour a day for 5 days.
You
So at this point, you might be thinking to yourself,
Oh, so it's not about practicing more, it's about being more consistent, right?
Yeah, but easier said than done. When I started, I was full of motivation, but life would get in the way. I'd miss a few days, forget my progress, and give up.
that's why the book Atomic Habits, written by James Clear, was a game changer for me when I was first starting out practicing.
In it, he shows how simply being motivated to improve doesn't amount to because yeah, you can get inspired to practice screaming for a whole day, but after a week, that initial excitement is gonna wear off. So if you're strictly dependent upon motivation, then you're gonna run out of fuel real quick and end up back at square one. So the question is,
Well, if I'm gonna run out of motivation, how will I be able to put in the work to get to my goals?
and the answer is by building the habit of practice. Habits last when motivation doesn't. If you make something a habit, you won't even think about whether or not you should or shouldn't do it, you'll just do it. Now, according to James, there are several ways that you can make something a habit and make a crap load of progress towards your goal. Now, I'm gonna tell you 5 of his tricks and then apply it to screaming.
How to make screaming practice a habit.
This first tip's probably the weirdest tip, but it's also the one that you can do just by thinking about it.
So first off, instead of aiming to change your behaviors, aim to change your identity. There's a big difference between somebody who wants to work out versus an athlete. These two identities have a different standard of normal. If someone who wants to work out slacks off, then they'll probably skip out on going to the gym altogether. But if an athlete slacks off, that person will still go to the gym, but maybe they just won't push as hard. Do you see the difference? Now let's apply that to screaming. From this point forward, you are no longer someone who is just trying to learn how to scream. I want you to identify as being a vocalist. If you're someone who's trying to learn how to scream and you slack off, then you're probably gonna miss a few days and just not end up practicing. But if you're a vocalist and you slack off, then you're still gonna put in the work, maybe just not as hard. You're holding yourself to a higher standard if you identify as a vocalist.
So if you enjoy being lazy like me, then you're gonna love this next tip. It allowed me to use my geeky love for anime to help me get better at screaming.
The reality is that when you're just starting out doing anything, there's going to be a period where you're putting in the practice but aren't seeing the results you want. Just because you worked out for 3 weeks straight doesn't mean you'll see a six-pack right away.
But
We are wired to look for short-term satisfaction. That's why the short-term satisfaction of chilling and playing Xbox starts to look a lot more desirable than practice screaming until you figure it out a month from now.
so you might be thinking,
Well, if I'm not going to become a badass screamer overnight, then how do I push through the initial period where there's little results?
until you start seeing results, every day after you practice, you can reward yourself by doing something you love. Like for me, it's watching anime. And that's tip number 2. Set up a reward system for practicing. So if you have social anxiety, this next tip might be painful, but I promise you it'll help.
Research shows that you start adopting the habits of people that you hang around with the most. And in fact, there's a study that strongly suggests that a person's IQ will actually raise by hanging out with other high IQ people. That's pretty crazy, right? Why is this? It's because it subconsciously redefines your perception of what normal is. When you think something is normal, it removes a lot of mental barriers and excuses that prevent you from doing something. You then start to think, hey, well, if everyone is doing it, then I can do it too. When I was learning how to scream, I had the fortune of reaching out to my friends who were badass vocalists who knew a lot more about screaming at the time than I did. In addition, I would also hang out with others that were also trying to learn to scream.
And that's the third tip. Surround yourself with others who are doing the same thing. This next one is another great tip for people that are lazy like me, that want to make practice easier. So, according to the book, if people were trying to get better at guitar, studies showed that if people simply had a guitar on a stand in their living room, they were way more likely to play it. Now, if I were to apply that to screaming, For me, it might be something like putting a mic with a small speaker in your living room ready to go right next to your chair. Maybe it's about putting a post-it note in your car that reminds you to practice screaming. So the lesson here is that we want to build your environment in a way to make screaming as easy as possible. So that tip is great, but the next tip is probably the most important one. Now, what's wild is that this piece of advice is simple and obvious, yet no one does this. So when I was learning, I literally did the deep sigh approach for 3 years. It didn't work, but my dumbass self was like, maybe I should keep doing it. But the thing is, you need to remember to pivot when things aren't working. When something isn't working, keep changing it until you find something that works for you. Even with coaches, it took me years and I felt like I wasn't built for screaming. The only reason I got it was because I kept going. I made practice a habit. Otherwise, I would have given up. You don't need to be born for it, you just need to stay in the game long enough to win. Now with these habits, progress is guaranteed, but to make quick progress, you gotta learn to not hurt your voice, the anatomy of different screams, and different techniques to pull them off. I've put together a deeper guide on how to do these things, and you can get it for free by clicking the link in the description. So check it out, and I'll see you inside. Peace.